to need $392,000 the day you retire to pay for your housing in retirement. Do you have that? Do you have that? If you don't, you can never retire. Are you nervous yet? You should be. $392,000. Do you have that? Let's talk about this. Because we hear all the studies about how much money you need at retirement in order to pay for healthcare costs, and that does not include long-term care. So I want to say, if that's how much money we need for healthcare, well, how much do we need for housing, given that housing is a huge, extraordinary measurement of your total expenditures in retirement? By far and away, the biggest expense you'll have is housing. So if healthcare is so dastardly, we need X amount of dollars for healthcare, then let's refocus on housing. So this will be interesting for you. You'll get a kick out of this one, and we can take a deep breath and relax. So don't forget to subscribe, thumbs up, smash the thumbs up button. As always, helps me with the YouTube algorithm, and of course, comments down below. So let's dive into this. So first and foremost, we're going to go to the Fidelity thing, and this is actually a pretty good website. They have a couple, and I'm going to refer a couple times to this. They got a pretty sweet right here, how much will it cost for you? And they got a little tutorial you can use. And I'll do a video on that separately. I liked it quite a bit. I don't have a qualm with their calculations, none the least. What I do have a qualm with is this right here. All right, so let's see. How much should you plan to pay for healthcare costs after you retire? According to Fidelity Healthcare Cost Estimate, an average retired couple age 65 in 2016 may need approximately $260,000 saved after tax to cover healthcare expenses in retirement. Of course, the amount you'll need will depend on when and where you live and how healthy you are. Let's just go down to number 13 here. 2016 analysis by Fidelity with the Benefits Consulting Group, a hypothetical couple retiring in 2016 at 65 years old with average life expectancy is 85 and 87 for male and female. So they're looking about 20 years or so. Estimates are calculated for average retirees, but we get that. Fidelity retiree healthcare cost estimates assume that individuals do not have employer-provided retiree healthcare coverage, but do qualify for original Medicare. The calculation takes into account cost-sharing provisions such as deductibles and coinsurance associated with Medicare Part A, Part B, and Part D, as well as certain services provided by the original Medicare. The estimate does not include other health-related expenses such as over-the-counter medications, dental services, and long-term care. And that's the big one right there where everyone freaks out on. Life expectancies are based on research and just on the Society of Actuaries 2014 tables. Okay, so that's good. Without question, I got no problem with it. Actually, I did a thing on what they're looking for, and it says after tax, and they're still using a 5% tax. So it'd actually be much, much more than $260,000 if you factor the taxes. Where is it? 260 here. It'd be much more than a 260 if I can find it. Yeah, but wherever it was, where'd it go, man? The 260,000. All right, here. They need approximately 260,000. That's after tax. Be more than that because you got to pay tax on 260. But anyway. So anyway, going to BLS survey. All right, so this is the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Let's make this a little bit bigger if it allows me. Yep, there we go. All right. And this literally, I'm telling you, I live and die on the BLS stuff and the HRS stuff, which is the Health and Retirement Study. I live and die by it. But I want to go on this. Average expenditures by age of reference person by Consumer Expenditure Survey. So these are real live numbers, not fanciful. They're real live. And I'm going to use the average expenditures from anyone age 55 and older. All right. So this goes from 55 all the way up until 95. I mean, their average expenditures. And we're going to say what their health. I'm going to backtrack how we get to housing. And we're going to get their health care. So their health care in this case is $5,452. And that's the average. And I always challenge the averages because averages can skew things much higher than they really are in reality because the bottom end of the average is zero. You can't go below zero. You don't have a negative healthcare cost. But you can have $8,000 billion like Susie Orman's mom, who she always refers to. And so that's going to skew the averages on the high end. But we're still going to use it because I think it's worthwhile to use. I challenge it to some degree because it's skewed on the higher end, but still, I think it's worthwhile to use to show you what I'm talking about here. So when I did average healthcare cost of $5,452 a year, And I did that per person. All right. So I said, look, that's per person, not per household. And that's almost identical to what Fidelity was saying. I mean, they said it's going to be about 11,000. And I'm not sure, but fine here someplace, about 11,000. I thought I saw it here someplace. The average, right. The average expected retiree is expected about pay about 5,000 a year on healthcare premiums and out of pocket expense, and going. And that's right. So about 5,000 a year, and that was in 2016. I inflated at 5.5%, which is essentially what Fidelity is doing using the BLS numbers. BLS numbers right here, which is 54, 52, and I came up with a 11,000. Let's show you 11,000 a year healthcare cost. All right, so we got 11,000 for a year with, and I'm adjusted for inflation. And so I got with a 5.5% inflation rate. And I'll go into another video specifically on this. About almost identical to what Fidelity had. I had about $275,000. You need $275,000 if you do a net present value, and you can take an Excel spreadsheet, take a trusty Texas Instrument, whatnot. So I got pretty close to Fidelity numbers. And folks, when it comes to retirement projections, you're not going to get an exact. Just do relative ballpark stuff. It's fine. And if you get pretty close, that's okay. So I got pretty close to what Fidelity said. They got 260, and that was in 2016. I got 275 or something like that. Using a couple of different things. Now I'm using, in that case, I was using a 5.5%. Let's see. Healthcare. I was using an $11,000 a year right here, adjusting with inflation of 5.5%. I think Fidelity was using 5.5%. I think as well, but I'm using it for 25 years, and Fidelity was using it for 22 years or so. So I got a couple more years on Fidelity, but it's ballpark. It's right around 250 to 300,000, give or take. And so I got pretty close to the same numbers as Fidelity. All right. So I'm pretty comfortable with my numbers. So if you look at the BLS though, and we're pretty comfortable with the BLS numbers relative to Fidelity's what they're using, what everyone seems to cite in financial planning, how we're all underprepared for healthcare costs and retirement. I said, what if we use the same numbers, but we looked at housing? Because housing represents a significant higher portion of overall expenditures. In fact, the BLS shows that housing represents a third of all expenditures from 55 until we die, where healthcare represents a third of that, only 11%. So what if we take this number right here? Housing is 16,219, and that is per household. All right, so the healthcare is per person. So we got to double this right here, and I get that. Still, the housing is significantly higher than the healthcare costs. It's not debatable, my friends. And this is just the average. This is not the median; it's the average. And so, what if we do with housing? And we use the exact same scenario. And so with housing, we got 16,219. In this case, I'm only inflating housing at 3% a year. So I got 3% inflation, whereas healthcare, we were inflating at 5.5% to follow the Fidelity model, right? So we're using 16,219, and every year is growing by 3%. So in 2 years will be 17,207, and you can see where we're going. In what's this? 13 years will be 23,124. We're just taking the average housing that the average consumer has spent from 55 through the end of his or her death, and we're adjusting that each and every year for inflation. All right, so we get total expenditure of $591,000, but now we got to back test that to get a present value. So we simply say, okay, of the 16,219 adjusted each and every year with inflation, how much do I need today at a 3% rate of return on my money, so before taxes, in order to be able to finance that amount of money? Does that make sense? And it's just you're basically coming up with a discounted rate, a present value. So for me to be able to pay $16,219 each and every year, adjusted for inflation, I need $392,000 today. All right, now this is after tax money as well. It'll be even worse when we factor in the taxes on that. But I'm not going to go for that. Because I'll let you. I mean, you're basically going to have to take 20% out for taxes, which would mean you need about $500,000. But we're going to put that to the side because I want to make sure that people get we're comparing apples to apples. We need $392,000 today, or the day I retire. We're going to say 65 years old, in which to pay for housing, the average housing cost for the average retiree for the rest of our lives. And that's going to be for 25 years, which will be until we're 90 years old and we're dead. Interesting, huh? Do you have $392,000? No. How come no one says we need $392,000 today to finance our housing costs. Now, if we get a 6% rate of return on our money, we need around $300,000. All right. If we go down here, you can see the last year, and essentially this is when the money runs out. So you need, I don't want to get too deep into this, but you can see the money, we got 376, 370, 364. It starts going down and down and down until it runs out right there at negative $26,000. So basically at the end of the 25th year, our check bounce, which is pretty, a lot of people want, at 6% rate of return, we start with a $300,000. We get down here to our last year, we got $26,000 left. All right. So anyway, at the end of the day, after taxes, we need between $300,000 and $400,000 in which at 65 years old, in which to finance the cost of average housing for the average American. Do you have that? No. Well, then how come no one's freaking out about the housing costs you need in retirement? Everyone freaks out about the healthcare costs in retirement, but no one freaks out about the housing. And the housing costs are significantly higher than the healthcare costs. And again, if we factor in taxes on this, because this will be for most people in IRAs, you're going to lose another quarter. So if you have 390, 392, 588 minus 0.8%, 392, 588 minus 392, 588 times 1 point. There we go. We're going to need about $470,000 in order to have the taxes to pay for this right here. That's at 20% state and feds. I mean, who has that? Nobody. But no one says, oh my goodness, I'll never be able to afford housing and retirement. No one says that. And yet that's what we're looking at right here. And this is just averages too, by the way. I mean, this isn't talking about folks who got mortgages. This is average. Anybody who could fall for this in terms of we're throwing the averages. Some people don't have mortgages, some do. Some people's housing is going to be significantly higher. Just like Fidelity study, it kind of says this is almost the implication is that's the worst case scenario. But it's not the worst case scenario. It's just not. In fact, they said, because we're not even including healthcare costs, long-term care costs. So I'm not including mortgage costs in here. I'm just saying the average cost for housing. As we know, most people they have in retirement, they don't have a mortgage anymore. So if you're one of the ones who have a mortgage, we could look at that little nasty asterisk, scare quotes to say this doesn't include people with mortgages. This is just the average. Anyway, so at the end of the day, we look at the BLS numbers, we look at the Fidelity numbers, which are right. All right, so. But the Fidelity numbers would lead you to believe you need $260,000 a day of retirement in order to fund